right. It's March 22nd, 2022. My last guest told me that we should just start recording right away because sometimes the fun stuff happens even before the official thing. So Roy and I are just saying hello to each other. He is a telecommunications expert, and he noted that my area code indicated that I was from Toronto. So he knows what's going on. He is an expert in phone numbers. And so today, so go ahead.
Well, let's hope it's a little more than phone numbers.
No, I'm sure you do other things as well. We'll get to that. But, it's fun to be able to remember phone numbers. My sister is proud that she remembers our childhood phone number from like 40 years ago and stuff. So
426-2139.
That was your childhood phone number?
Yep.
That's awesome. See, that's the thing. And that's what I think a lot of people these days with cell phones and stuff might not have that joy because you don't dial, like probably a lot of people don't even know their own phone number, like, because you don't really dial it. It's in your phone and you just tell your phone, call this number or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but it gets hardwired into our brains as kids.
Right on.
So exactly. Here, I'm gonna do a little introduction. This is the theme song and I customize it each week. And I don't plan ahead. So let's see how this goes. Let's see. Welcome to Spark the Genius. Today's guest is Roy Osing. He's an expert in phones, and in the old days, phones used to ring. He created like a company that was worth $1 billion, or he grew it to $1 billion or whatever. It was billions, and now he works in branding, and he will help you make millions, or maybe billions if you want to be optimistic. So that's my
Very
song.
nice.
Thank you very much.
The guitar was slightly out of tune, and you could have done it in F, which is a better key. But other than that, whatever.
Yeah,
and just a picky point, it's Osing. Can I call you Josh or whatever I call you?
Yeah, you can call me that. I mean,
Josh,
I changed my name to Spark.
But who's paying any attention anyway?
Yeah, okay. I was pretty, I was sure when I saw the name, like, oh, I know how to pronounce this. I don't even have to ask. It's going to be so good. He's going to be so proud that I pronounced his name right. But 50-50, I got it wrong. So wait, I don't even remember what it is now. I probably said Osing, and you said it's Osing?
I said it's Osing. You see, that's one of the reasons why you probably shouldn't start recording right away. So the quid pro quo is, there's probably some housekeeping things that you want to get out of the way before you actually go live.
Nah, this is the exact reason I record it, because I think it's more fun. It's like
you do. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is why I'm not Joe Rogan. He does things properly. But right for me, I like things raw.
No big deal. No biggie. I've had worse. I've had Oosling. I've had Osling. I've had Osing. Some people thought I was Oriental, actually, without seeing me, just looking at the name, right?
Yeah.
Because they spelled it O-S-I-N-G. I mean, so.
Or half Irish and half Chinese. Sing.
Have a go. As far as I'm concerned.
Or I guess, you could, like, if you split it up differently, you could be like Roy Osing. That'd be a cool name, Royo.
That's true. And you could put the GH on the end, and it leads you a completely different direction.
Right. Then you're Indian. Or is that Indian?
Well, the reality is I'm Norwegian. My ancestry is Norwegian, and so that's where it stops.
Okay. So have you done the, like the DNA test, and they tell you you're 100% Norwegian, that kind of thing?
No, it's too expensive for me. I mean, I can't do it. I can't afford it. So
what, $100?
Yeah, I mean, times are tough. You've seen the price of gas? Jesus.
I have. Yeah, no, these are, inflationary times. Nothing. I mean, that's the thing when you think about it. Like, your money's actually worth less than it was before. It's pretty crazy. I should have just invested.
I'll tell you one thing. Book publishing is not a way to make a lot of money.
No.
So that's the other thing.
Well, I think, from what I hear, I'm starting to realize I quote James Altucher like basically throughout all my. Do you know him? Okay, so he has a show called The James Altucher Show, kind of like what I'm doing, but he does it well. And he's always talking about entrepreneurship and business. And I think one of the things he talked about was, writing a book. You might not necessarily make a lot of money from it, but it's a tool for other things. Like if people are deciding who they're going to hire to give a speech or whatever, If somebody has a book and somebody doesn't, well, you're going to take the person with the book. So it kind of gives you prestige.
It's a bit tongue in cheek for me because my whole thing is not about selling books at all. It's about trying to change the conversation in the world around business and careers, which quite frankly I think is dismal at the moment. And we can get into that if you want. But so I look at this as I got 7 books actually, and all I consider those to be is handouts around my stuff, the stuff that worked for me when I had a real job, and hopefully will work for other people if they have the tenacity to actually do something with them. So for me, it's not about the books. It's about what's in the books and trying to get people convinced that there are things they should try. That's what I do.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. And I should just quickly introduce you, I guess, now that we're 5 minutes in. People are like, why are we listening to this? This is Roy Osing, the Irish-Asian entrepreneur guy. No, he was a big business guy. You were like CEO of TELUS for many years, I guess? Is that
No,
correct?
I was not.
No.
I worked my way around the organization and up the organization, have the opportunity to be the president of the company that was responsible for getting into the data and internet space, and when it was relatively young. And so we had the chance to build the business into what ended up to be $1 billion in annual sales, which was an amazing opportunity. And we just had a whole bunch of warriors that got together and did it at a time when the telecommunications business was going through a metamorphosis between monopoly and competition. So we had the challenge of trying to change the culture, because the voice culture is not the same as the data culture. We had to change technologies, we had to change skill sets. So it was a huge undertaking, and we got together and did it. And in retrospect, it was an amazing accomplishment for a group of people to sort of take advantage of an opportunity and build it into a very successful business. I reported to the CEO, and so that's kind of what that relationship was. But he basically let me do my own thing, which is good.
Yeah, that's nice. I guess that's the ideal, if you can work at a big company and have big influence, but also get to actually do things and use your brain and make a difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a large company, but it had a whole bunch of sub businesses in it, which was really amazing. Like, some people will say to me, Roy, you've only worked for one company, and that's true. The reality is, though, I probably did more than most people will ever had the opportunity to do in terms of different experiences within that company. So I've led marketing and sales. I've led operations, where I got to know the importance of frontline people and what customer service is all about. And I was the chief marketing officer and the president of AdvanceCom, which was our data and internet company. So I had a lot of opportunities to move around and try to achieve some things with some remarkable people that even in a small organization people don't have. I mean, right? I mean, I mean, the breadth and depth of experience that I was able to do was amazing, and I'm forever grateful to have those opportunities. So large companies can be really excellent contexts for doing great work and exploring a lot of different things.
Yeah,
And
because
so for anybody out there that says, "Gee, I've only had one employer," don't think that's a bad thing. That's a great thing. The issue is, what are you doing to take advantage of it?
yeah, that's all smart. Because I was working at big ad agencies for my career, but then back in my head, I was always like, well, no, it's better to have my own thing, be an entrepreneur, actually have control over things. But then I've realized lately, it's like, well, wait a minute, there's only so much you can do as one person. Like, even Jeff Bezos needs people around him to do things. So, if you work at Disney or a large company, you can do things that you couldn't do otherwise. Like, as an individual freelance copywriter, Procter & Gamble's not going to hand me a brand to be in charge of. You need the team. So a big company that lets you sort of do your own thing, but also within the context of that, because there's a lot of entrepreneurship, promotion these days, like Gary Vee, like go out and do your own thing. Like, a lot of people are doing their own businesses online, And a lot of people think, oh, am I tied down by having a 9 to 5, working for, making someone else rich, working for another company? And that sort of got in my head. And now I'm like, wait a minute, it was cool to work for another company.
Well, for me, it depends on how you define entrepreneurship. I tend to define it on the basis of having the freedom, degrees of freedom to do crazy, weird things and achieve superlative results. Being an entrepreneur, just to call yourself a one-man or one-person show, for me, is ridiculous. Okay? I mean, success is measured by outcomes, not by a process. And as far as I'm concerned, we had opportunities to be pretty amazing entrepreneurs in a world that didn't call them that, quite frankly. We were striving to deliver results in a highly, highly competitive marketplace with, at that time, a lot of rules that were working against us because we were regulated and the competitors weren't. Okay, so we had to build a business in the face of that. Now, if anybody tries to tell me that that's not entrepreneurship, I will laugh. Because compared to what most people think entrepreneurs do, like they don't work from 9 to 5 and they hang out online, blah, 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 I got no use for that, Josh. That's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, life is measured by outcomes and performance, not by hanging out, right?
Yeah.
It just isn't.
And I even just saw an Instagram reel yesterday, a woman like on her bed working, and she's lip syncing something, saying, "This is my office. I'm in bed. I can work." And it's all about, "Look at me. I'm working from the beach," and all of this. So that seems to be sort of what everybody talks about. Even Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Workweek, work from the beach, do your job from the beach. But you're more like, no. Work is work. You gotta.
No. I'm all for working from the beach. Okay, but I'll measure that environmental condition by virtue of the results you produce. So if you can hang out on the sand and deliver, amazing results, then I'm your best friend. But if all you're doing is hanging out on the beach to make a point that you can be free to work wherever you want to work, then I find that non-credible. I just do. The activity doesn't define the person. The outcome defines the person. At least in my frame of reference. Now, there are people that obviously wouldn't agree with that, and that's fair enough, okay? But entrepreneurs need to deliver, and I work with a lot of them as startups. And one of the big problems that they have is the idea that they bring to the table isn't particularly unique, and yet they think by throwing money at an idea they can make it successful. So, I try and get them to understand what I call competitive advantage by the only statement, which says we're the only ones that. If you can pass that test in terms of a new idea, then you got a good chance of actually moving it along, as opposed to being a statistic of the 50% that die after 3 years. Okay, so that focus on the outcome, the focus on positioning in the market, the focus on being different or being dead, is something that I'm trying to advocate. Not just in business, but in people's careers. You know yourself. I mean, I had to work real hard at standing out from a crowd of engineering people. Okay, when the world was going highly competitive, and I had to work hard at that to get noticed. I had to deliver results in a unique way, so I would get noticed, and people would go, "Oh, look what Roy's doing. That's pretty cool. Maybe we should work on his career." So the whole be different mindset works in that realm just as much as it works on how to succeed in business.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about now that it's, you yourself are a brand, so it's all up, and I think that's a great thing to always keep in mind.
Seriously, yeah, that's the way it. I mean, I've read brand statements that, quite frankly, make me want to laugh, because they will talk about, well, we provide CRM solutions to small business. That's the brand statement, right? Mm-hmm. So I look at that and I ask myself the question, why would I choose you versus everybody else that says the same thing? Because that's not a unique statement. And that leads me into my whole shtick around branding, is that it's not about you. It's about you in the context of other choices that people have. So if you're a business claiming to provide CRM solutions, what I want to know is, okay, what makes you special? Okay, why should I buy from you and not the 77,000 other people that are in the same business? And that leads me again back to a statement of uniqueness, which missing in brands, Josh, is this whole notion of comparatives and standing out. Okay, you need
Yeah.
to be able to communicate to people why you're special relative to the needs and cravings that they have. So it's not about us, it's about us serving them in a unique way. And that's my spin on branding. And quite frankly, I mean, I read a lot of, I mean, I'm not a textbook lover, okay, because it promulgates tradition. And if you read any, go Google branding, and read the article on my blog this week. Go Google
I did read
brands.
it. Yeah.
Good. And so you'll see in there, like some pretty major successful companies, okay, are in my view missing an opportunity
Yeah,
to
you had
drive
Disney and
home.
Starbucks there.
Absolutely. And so again, like I'm not saying that that the brand has prevented Starbucks from being successful. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons why they are, but what I am saying is when one expresses their position in the marketplace, it needs to be on strategy, as the article says, and it also has to express how you compare to others to give people an idea as to why they should choose you. The problem with it is if you don't do that, you leave it up to the consumer, okay, to make the decision. Why would you want to put them through all of that pain to go figure it out? I mean, your job as a business is to express in clarity, unique ways why you should be picked. That's my thing. And I
Yeah.
apply it to everything. I apply it to jobs, brands, just pick anything going on. And I think the same sort of criteria applies. And the problem I have is, and I wrote my original book, Josh, in 2009. Okay,
Wow.
the data, the content is strong. It's stronger today, 13 years later, than it was when I wrote it. And my observation is the progress of people to adopt some of these simple, highly effective performance enhancing concepts. I mean, it's I guess I haven't done a good job. I guess I
Yeah.
haven't done a good job
Well,
spreading the word.
it's sorry. What was that last part you said?
Spreading the word, and
I was
I
spreading the
guess
word. Yeah.
I just haven't done
Well,
it well
you'll
enough.
have to try harder. But I mean, I guess there's only so many people you can you can reach, and through this podcast, you'll reach probably two or three more people. So it's all
I
it's all
hope
work.
so.
Yeah. Although no, I was going to say my parents, but they don't listen, so I don't know
Yeah,
who.
they
But
don't. They read newspapers just
they
like
do,
yeah.
and
Nothing wrong with
we're
that.
no, it's yeah, they love getting it to the front door and everything. But my mom's always concerned, like, does anybody still subscribe or whatever? So
Well, hey, listen, there's a whole topic of customer service around delivering newspapers. I mean, there are deliverers that blow your socks off, and there are deliverers that really shouldn't have that job because they're not very good at it.
well,
When you
that's
break it down, that's pretty sick.
it's a bit. We've had that exact discussion with my parents a couple of weeks ago because the old guy used to deliver it to their house. He would walk right to the front door and stick it through the slot. But I guess there's a new guy who just throws it from the sidewalk and he doesn't even try to get it on the porch. It just lands in the snow, and my parents find it in the snow, or it just some days it just doesn't come because it's a bit snowy out, so he doesn't come at all, and he delivers two papers the next day. And I'm like, yeah, if you don't even want to do the job, don't do it, or put in the effort and actually, I don't know. Yeah, so it's
Well, and
exactly that thing.
that same person that
Yeah,
throws the papers in the water, they'll
yeah,
actually leave a Christmas card and expect a tip.
right. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be that person that's because I would imagine that person's kind of selfish, so they're always like, "Where's my tip?" But the nice person who cares about the job is going to be not thinking about where's my tip. It's more like, how can I provide you?
They'll just naturally get it. They'll
Yeah,
just naturally get the tip. They don't have to ask for it.
yeah,
Anyways, strange world. In terms of my stuff, which I really hope people familiarize themselves with on my blog and my books, I'm disappointed with the level of progress generally, and this is a generalization. I'm disappointed with the level of progress out there in terms of people willing to try some stuff that, quite frankly, is really simple and it works. And the proof point around the fact that it works is the billion. All right. I was asked yesterday by somebody. They said, "Well, did you isolate the various things that you did, all right, and determine whether or not how much significance each of those items had on the billion?" And I said, "Hell no. Why would I do that? Microscopic analysis. What's it going to show me?" All I did is I looked at the revenue line and I said, "Are we ahead or behind?" If we are ahead, I said, "What's really working well?" And we should do more of that. If we're behind, I said, "What isn't working? And let's see whether we can change it or get rid of it." Simple as that. This is not a world of regression analysis and predictive equations, okay? It's a matter of audacious leadership, putting in place things that resonate with people and light their fires, and keep doing it and supporting them and modifying that on the go. I call it planning on the run, which isn't a very acceptable concept in today's world of strategic planners, right? But when you're in a world where things change every day and it's highly unpredictable, you need to have a dynamic planning model. And I call it execute first, plan second. And I've created a whole way to plan around that because I developed it for myself as president of this company to actually move things along. And I find that conversation, unfortunately, our young people are taught to do planning by rote, and that's largely an influence of academia. And by the way, I get no issue with that, but it doesn't go far enough. I want to take it further than that, right? But there's no conversation around planning on the run. There's no conversation around heading west as good fundamental strategic planning concepts. There's no conversation about pain. Now, pain is a valid concept, okay? But you don't hear people strategizing around how to leverage pain into progress. You don't hear that conversation. I want to have that conversation.
What does that mean? What are you talking about, pain? Is that an acronym, or are we talking about the physical pain?
No, it's not an acronym. That's one of the, yeah, there you go, right? Must stand for something complex.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
Josh, it doesn't. Pain is pain. Pain is created when people are trying to achieve and they run into roadblocks and relentlessly continue to go forward to execute on the strategy. That's what they run into. And the successful people know how to manage that and use it and embrace it, right, to give them more energy, to keep executing, to get the performance that we need. That's why it's strategic. Nobody talks about pain as a strategy. If you check my blogs and go search the blogs, I talk about the strategic concept of pain and why it's so important to hire people with a high pain tolerance, because they will be. I don't want people, when they run into a roadblock, to fall back. I don't. And generally people, I shouldn't say generally, a lot of people do. They run into what they think is an immovable object, and instead of trying to figure out how to go through it or around it, over top of it, they fall back and say, "Oh, shucks, damn, I've run into a roadblock. I can't do this."
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, I guess I shouldn't get into politics, but have you been following the Disney situation right now?
I try not to.
Yeah. It might not even be related exactly to what you're talking about, but the new CEO of Disney, I guess, was seen as a bit more, or he's considered more conservative than Bob Iger was. So, but there's a lot of senior people that are very progressive still, and they've been pressuring him to come out against the new Florida. All that
gay rights thing.
Yeah, and then apparently he wanted to stay neutral, but then he was pressured to come out against it. So he came out against a bit, but now they're really pushing hard. So he's he's just caving. I don't know if that's not really a business thing, but
it's not the same thing at all.
No, yeah,
not
okay,
the
so
same thing at all.
bad example. But I guess what would be an example? Like, I guess if you're trying to sell a detergent and it's not working.
The simple example would be if you're trying to introduce at a very low level, if you're trying to introduce a new product, all right, and you're in an organization and you're running into a lot of difficulty moving it through, okay, the organization to actually get it to market, And that happens all the time. It happens with technical people. It happens with systems people. It happens with advertising people. It happens with basically every function. You're going to run into pain points, pressure points, complex, where they stop you. Okay, so your end result, which is to get this product to market by March the 15th, that's in jeopardy. And that's what you're going to be measured on. Like, I didn't care what the problems were. Your job was to solve the problems, push it through, and get to market by the 15th. When people run into those roadblocks, I call it their pain points. I want people that can suffer the pain and move it through. Yeah. And I look around and I say, well, there's too much willingness to back off. There's too much willingness to avoid confrontation. There's too much willingness to avoid conflict. Okay, when the outcome is there and it's a valid one and it needs to be achieved, because the rest of the world, in this case the organization, is relying on you to get this thing through. You can't go to your safe room, dude.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned safe room. You know, like, because the whole this conversation was making me think about how people are these days with needing their safe spaces. Like, kind of like, if anything pushes back, or people are avoiding, they don't want to be offended. They don't want to. The second something happens, people want to say, "Well, I'm a victim. The world is against me. The world is evil. Everybody's awful." And rather than, okay, here's the situation. How do I get around this? You know, whether it's true or not that the world's against you. You're not going to change the entire earth. So what do you need to do to get to your goal and do what you can?
That's exactly right.
In the real world.
That's exactly. It's a great description of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And again, I'm not chastising that. I'm just saying that's the way it is, and it does represent a challenge. Okay, to actually get things done, right? Yeah. And that's where I'll go to. I mean, I'm not sitting here talking to you about things that I've done, and we haven't really got into that yet, but things like cut the crap, things like killing dumb rules. Really cool ideas. They're strategic, all right? I'm not saying that they're right because they're cute.
Yeah.
Don't ever think that, okay? I relied on these fundamental things to actually deliver superlative results. And if I didn't believe that the concept was instrumental in helping me get to those results, I wouldn't have done it. Okay, so there's a lot of people say, Roy, well, yeah, you talk about hiring for Goosebumps. That's just a cute idea, right? No, because it's all about hiring the right people with the right skills to keep loyal customers and drive revenue. Mm-hmm. That's how we got to the billion, by doing a whole bunch of that stuff. Not the silver bullet stuff, not the prescribed formularized solution that you find in textbooks, business books. No, basic human stuff where you can engage the fire in somebody's gut to do something and do it well and do it fast and move on to the next and push through. We need people to push through.
Right. It's like, all of this is making me think different things. Like, for example, I was listening to a podcast this week about how do people do things. Like, most people don't know how they do things. Like, an athlete couldn't describe to you, here's exactly how I take a basketball shot, and I have to be 6 feet from this person and wait until there's a clear lane. Like, you just do it. Like, so people need to, an athlete or almost anyone, an actor, you have to trust your gut. A lot of this stuff is your gut, and you just sort of adapt and you do it, but it's not about, let me write down the exact process. So that's one thought I was thinking. And then the second thought I was thinking, when you were talking about, like, the, having a statement where you're the only something, I guess at P&G and a lot of brands, it used to be called USP, unique selling propositions. You wouldn't have a brand like Cheer detergent without knowing, well, why would I buy Cheer over Gain detergent? Well, Cheer is the one that protects your colors. Gain is the one that smells great. And
but okay, hang on.
Yeah.
I can't let you keep going on this stuff. I've looked at USPs. You go look at a USP, okay?
Yeah.
And tell me if it passes the only statement criteria. It may talk about what you think you're unique at in terms of the colors that you just mentioned. But my question is, well, hang on a sec. What about the other detergents? Mm-hmm. What do they do? Why are you so different than the other detergents who, quite frankly, claim the same thing and they spin it differently? So interestingly, you should mention that because 2 days ago I had just a super conversation with somebody else around this branding and USP, et cetera, et cetera. And I had them just Google it and pull out some stuff and just tell me if it passes the only statement litmus test, that stuff. And the reality is most of it won't. And I'm not saying it's bad, okay? But it doesn't go far enough, right? If the difference between you and your competitors doesn't jump out from the USP, it means you need to do some more work on it. You need to get your thoughts a little clearer in terms of what makes you special. And the problem is, I see too much aspirational platitudes in this work because it's hard to define what you're special at. It's hard to define uniqueness. It requires guidance and assistance, right? And cajoling, right? It doesn't require you to look at a brand textbook, is my point. It requires more than that. Okay, that's the brand piece. Now, what was the other piece you made? Because I want to make a comment on that.
Going,
the first part.
Sort of going with your gut, like
yes,
not like
okay.
let me.
Yeah, excellent observation, and that's exactly the state you want to get into. Now, from my experience, the question is, why is it that in this particular sort of environment of pushing projects, of working on projects, and advancing relationships and all this kind of stuff, why is it that people don't react automatically? Well, there's a couple of observations I have. First of all, they've never been taught that it's okay to do that. Okay, there's these narratives that surround the environment, right, that are affecting them. Don't hurt somebody's feelings, right? Communicate, blah, blah, blah. And there's all of these psychological kinds of dynamics that affect what people do. So they're spending so much time in their head, Josh, that they don't have time to respond the way maybe they otherwise would, okay? The other thing is our education system doesn't teach that. It just doesn't. And again, that's fine, it is what it is, but it doesn't go far enough, right? It teaches that there's a right solution. It teaches that you can formularize practically anything. I mean, hell, I didn't use regression analysis to develop revenue budgets. You know why?
I don't even know what regression analysis is.
Okay, it's a math thing, right, that takes a whole bunch of independent variables, right, and has the audacity to assume that you understand that if you put those together in a certain way, a specific outcome will occur. And a lot of people use it to develop forecasts, right? So it could be, independent variables could be, economic growth, market share, and all this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of them. And they run it through a computer model, and out comes a prediction that your revenues based on all these assumptions will be this.
Right.
Guess what? It's never even close, because the assumptions are impossible to quantify, and yet we spend a lot of time actually trying to do that. And so I never paid a whole lot of attention to that. The other thing that it does is it eliminates the need to innovate. Like, if you think you know how to achieve something, what motivation do you have to do anything different? You don't.
Yeah.
So the unknown is the biggest driver of innovation out there. And I use that because I said, we're going for this. We have no idea how we're going to get there. Let's innovate and create and figure it out. That's what we did. I mean, we didn't use mathematical models, stuff like that. But it works. And I think there's too much of that going on to answer your question about why do people not have the freedom or feel they have the freedom to kind of react and do these sorts of things that inside might feel right. It's all these constraints that they feel are being imposed on them that prevent them from acting the way they want. That's just my view. There's so much going on right now that's inhibiting people's ability to do the natural stuff.
Well, I mean, part of it, I guess if we're talking about a big company, might be the culture of the company. Like, I don't know exactly what it's like at Procter & Gamble. I haven't worked for them for 6 or 7 years, but for example, or any of these big companies I would do writing for, like Visa or Kellogg's or whatever, they've got their process, and I guess the process is there to try to mitigate risk and also to have, then you have accountability. If you or you avoid blame, I guess. If you do a commercial and it doesn't do well, you're like, well, we did focus group, but it got the best score, so it's not my fault. But if you just go with your gut and say, we're going to run this thing, and it doesn't work, then it's like, oh, you're fired. So there's the process. I don't know if things are faster now, because we used to spend maybe a year focus grouping a script and then another year like producing it, whatever. Things happen faster on the internet now.
Cycle times have shrunk, no question, and that's a good thing. But what I find sometimes missing is the linkage back to strategy. It's like, let's get this done faster, as opposed to saying, first of all, let's make sure it's right. Like let me give you an example. I'm constantly asked for my opinion on advertising. Yeah. What do you think about this? What do you think about this commercial? What do you think about this and that? And my answer to everybody is, I have no idea. And of course, they're shocked at that. Of course, I should have an opinion, right? Yeah. After all, our ad budgets were quite high. But I would say to them, the reason I don't have an opinion is I need to know first what you're trying to achieve. If I don't know what your strategic context is, I have no right to give you an opinion, because I'm just giving you personal bias. Okay, so that linkage between strategy and executing, in this case, an ad campaign, is exceedingly important, and sometimes, for the sake of speed, it gets kind of like obliterated. It's not clear. It's not focused. It gets vagueness popping in. So the worst situation is you could be finding the right answer to the wrong problem. You could find a solution, an ad campaign, that is not tightly fitted to the strategy, in which case you look at the results, and that might explain why the results don't show. Right.
I just went through something like that like a month ago. There's a woman who asks me sometimes to speak to her high school class over Zoom, and she's teaching marketing, and she had me review their radio ads, and so I listened to them, and it was for chocolate flavored broccoli, and I listened to them, and I was like, you know what, I like this one the best. She wanted me to rate them and pick a winner, and I said, this one's great because it's like I don't know. There was I think it was Santa the zombie, or there was some with Santa, some with zombies. Like, I'm a zombie. I need chocolate. And they eat the broccoli, whatever. And it was like funnily ad. And so I said, yeah, that's the winner. Look how creative it is. And the other ones were kind of we're just talking about moms and stuff. And but I thought about it for a day afterwards, and I was like, wait a minute. Like, I think I got hoodwinked by the fancy zombie and everything, because it occurred to me, well, what was the strategy here? It was probably to talk to moms and teach them, here's a way to get your kids to eat broccoli. You want them to eat healthy, and this is chocolate. So I listened to the spots again. I was like, no, there was one was like, hey, moms, like, your kids aren't eating broccoli. It's like, I don't like broccoli. Well, now there's chocolate. And I realized that one was probably more on strategy and probably would have appealed more to the mom, rather than just hearing a zombie eating chocolate that didn't really have anything particular to do with broccoli or whatever. So I wrote a long thing again saying, by the way, actually, could you, I changed my mind. So I felt bad because I didn't want the kids who were on strategy to think, oh, I guess we just weren't as funny. I'm like, that wasn't the thing.
But that's the key. Yeah. That's the key. Like, in my world, I call that line of sight leadership. Okay, the audacious leader practices line of sight. They make it a point of directly linking the strategy to every function in the organization. Literally. And I did that. So when we had a strategy to grow the business, which eventually got to where it got to, everybody in marketing knew their role. Everybody in sales knew their role. Everybody in internal audit knew their role. So it's extremely hard to do and time consuming, but because success is based on execution, not the plan. I mean, I can take a mediocre plan and execute it brilliantly and beat the pants off anybody who's got a pristinely described plan according to the books but can't execute it, right? So the execution piece requires line of sight. What's happening in the example we've just been discussing is you all were mesmerized by the creative.
Yeah.
Okay, and didn't ask the question, why are you doing that? Tell me the strategic imperative you are satisfying. And that's the questions. I always go to strategy and never do something for the sake of doing it unless I understand the context for it. And I think there's a lot of that going on in today's world as well, with young professionals, particularly struggling in organizations to be successful. One of the things I always ask them right up front is, what's the strategy for your organization? And tell it to me in detail. And I have to say, not enough know it. Because if you're not informed on that, then the activity that you get involved in is not strategic, and people won't notice, other than the klutzes that are really, really excited about looking at busy people. And they'll eventually take care of themselves anyway. But the people who are going to control your career in any frame of reference, they need to understand, and they will reward you for being driven by the key things your business or organization is trying to achieve. We just have to ask the right question. And I always ask it.
That's good, because that was sort of my specialty as a copywriter. It still is, I guess. I'm still alive. That my stuff would be funny or interesting or whatever, but also relevant on strategy. Like the client at P&G is going to be like, well, no, we're trying to talk about how Tide is the powerful cleaner, or cinnamon corn pops have a crunch, and like whatever their strategy is. And a lot of teams would just come up with like, hey, we made a funny thing, and at the end we say cinnamon corn pops, and the client's like, well, and the focus groups are like, I don't understand what your point is. So they called me their secret weapon. They would bring me in the end and say, here, Josh will solve this, and do it in a way that, oh, now it makes sense. It's about corn pops, but look, he's holding the corn pop, and it's talking about the crunch, and it's the sound of the crunch. Like it's weaved through the entire commercial rather than here's a joke with a logo at the end.
Yeah,
which I think would be
example. That I'll give you an example at a higher level. Okay, when our company started to get serious about providing cellular service, the strategy was to be literally the only organization that will be into a community when there's nobody there. In other words, said differently, we're going to be first in with cellular service to every community. That was the goal. Okay.
Yeah.
The advertising followed that. What we ended up showing was creative that exhibited advanced technology and new solutions and happier customers going into a wilderness. Right? And it was like breaking new ground. So the strategic linkage there, the fit was tight, like you wouldn't believe it. Nobody would accept any creative of somebody, sitting there on a cell phone, talking to somebody having a beer. Totally irrelevant. It may be a cute, creative, totally strategically irrelevant. And we just drove the hell. And it ended up to be first. Be first, be first, be first.
Right.
And that campaign worked like a damn, and competitively worked like a damn as well, because we were first in, taking some risks, but hey, you got to take risks.
Yeah, and it's just probably especially hard at a large company like that to find something that sort of sounds unique and make everything drive towards it, especially with something that's like a utility. It's like talking. It's like, how do you differentiate yourself from the other two giant cell phone companies?
It's not difficult.
No.
It just requires people to focus on the challenge of doing it. Like I can't tolerate. I mean, it's easy to say and I hear this from people who work in large companies. Well, we can't do that because we're so large. Bullshit. That's not true. What you're really saying is it's hard to do, right? Because there's so many variables, so many people, et cetera, et cetera. Well, okay, here's the deal. If you don't like the environment, get out of the environment. But don't stay in the environment. Take the benefits you get and tell me you can't achieve what you need to achieve to drive results to satisfy shareholders. That's a non-starter with me. So I don't let people get away with that, because you can chunk it down, okay? Think about it. 10,000 people in my data organization. We chunked it down into pieces and worked on pieces. You can always make smallness out of bigness if that's what you want, if that's what you have to do.
Well, that's a huge tip in life. Like, things seem overwhelming. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get in shape. What the heck does that mean? But if you chunk it down to, I am going to have a glass of water with 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar every morning. That's something I can do. That's a thing. I'm going to get out of bed and first thing go for an hour jog every morning. That's okay. Check. Like, if you have to chunk it down smaller, I'm going to put on my shoes the second I get out of bed. Like, whatever you need to do to get to where you're going, look at it in small pieces. And I want to be as big as Joe Rogan. Well, that's how does that work? But I'm going to record a call with Roy, and that's what I'm doing. That's my little piece today, kind of thing. So,
well, it's true. One of the things I say to people, and I will to your listeners or viewers, I can't,
both
is that in terms of be different, one of the things that could work for you is tomorrow or today, after you've listened to this, I want you to do one single thing that's different that you've never done before. Just one little thing. Doesn't have to be big, just a small little thing, and give up something that's no longer relevant to your life.
Yes, declutter.
Start that way. And the next day, either repeat that, do something new, or do two things new, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yes.
But as I call it, progress by nano inches, like get an inch of progress fast. I call it a nano inch of progress, right? Just get those little things and start to move. The premise being, if you have the Bell distribution curve, if you can move everybody in the middle in that big bulge, if you can move them 5%, 2%, what an amazing change you're witnessing. Because the guys at the extremes, they're going to do what they're going to do, right? Yeah. It's the people in the middle that you want to get changing. It's a classic kind of approach to it. So do one little thing different. Be different. Like look at everything you do through a be different lens. And here's what worked for me.
Are you talking about be different in terms of compared to other people, or a different thing that you've never done before?
It can be whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. It can be whatever. Eventually, the whole notion of be different or be dead is competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it is a comparative. Okay. Do something that's different than everybody else to satisfy something that people care about. That's something they care about, which is important, right? And never forget the customer. Do something there. But one cool way to get started is to just do it for yourself and learn your way into the comparative. That's what it is. It's a continuum. So do that one thing. But the way to get at it is through a lens, which you might want to use. It's like, and it really worked for me, is every time I was faced with something to do, I would always say, how can I do this differently? Okay, in brackets, from anybody else.
Right.
But it didn't start out that way. It started out, well, how can I do this differently than what I would normally do? And then it sort of grew into, okay, I've been given this project. I think I know how everybody else is going to approach this project. So how can I do it differently? And it could be like more detail. It could be using third-party references. It could be my own personal twist. It could be the language I use. It could be the length, whatever. As long as it stood out, let's go with that and try and figure out how it would look and see what the feedback would be.
Yeah,
I soon discovered that the feedback was amazing. People noticed that everybody else was doing the herd stuff, and I was out here pushing on the edges, coloring outside the lines, doing different stuff. And they got to pay attention to that. And that helped make a change to the culture over time.
I think it's all about experiments, like in life or even in business. You can't figure out by just thinking about it, like what's going to work. You just have to try it. And I mean, you can make your best guess, but just do it. Like, I'm going to start a podcast. Like, I can't plan ahead a year and go, I'm going to get this far by doing this. No, just do it. Just start it and then see, okay, what's this podcast about? I'll keep adapting it. I'll keep changing it. Same thing in business, I guess. You overthink things and you go, oh, we need our strategies. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. Just do it and, see what comes of it and learn.
100% agree. I have this, my only formula I ever have is you need to spend only 20% of your time on what you want to do. You need to spend 80% of your time on how you're going to do it. And in part, it gets to the trying thing, the experimentation thing, and I call it planning on the run. I call it executing first, planning second. It's like building a world around getting stuff done.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And you can do that personally, and you start out with that in organizations that pontificate more than they produce. Okay, which is one of the reasons that shareholders aren't happy and growth is stultified. All this stuff is based. We don't have leaders, audacious people who are focused on execution. They're focused on trying to make the plan pristine according to some pundits in strategic planning.
Yeah, like especially with things where you're advertising or marketing or any of this stuff, trying to turn it into a science. It's not a science. If there was a way to turn into a science, then any company doing the focus groups or whatever would be making $1 billion. But we kept doing focus groups on commercials, and I'm like, none of this makes any sense. This is all, I don't want to say they're con artists, but a lot of these companies that do market research, they're coming up with words to justify their existence, but nobody knows anything. It's kind of like when I took psychology in school. I took a class called the Psychology of Anomalous Experience, where they were talking about why people believe in horoscopes and ghosts and all that. And our teacher was saying, listen, people claim to have studies about proving paranormal psychic abilities or whatever. But even if we did discover paranormal abilities one day, all these studies are useless. Like, nothing they've studied is actually helpful. So I was kind of it made me think of the same things about all this market research. It's like, none of this applies. Every time we're doing it from scratch again. There's nothing that works. You just have to do things. It just made me, I don't know. I was just looking at your examples of branding statements, like Starbucks and Disney, but also people's, because it seems, if you look at people's Instagram bios lately, it looks like they've all taken kind of the same entrepreneurship class where there's a formula where they say, I am a business coach who help busy moms make a 6-figure income from home, or whatever. And so they do seem to be missing the only part. They've been taught, say what you do, which I guess is a step above what most people's Instagram bio would just be. They'd be like, hey, let's have fun or whatever. So they're saying what they do, but you're challenging people to say, okay, why? There's probably a lot of entrepreneurs who help busy moms or whatever. Like, what makes you different? And it might be hard. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's so easy to get sucked into that. Like, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, damn, absolutely, I need to go back into my Podmatch bio because there's some stuff in there I know. Like, I'm not eating my own dog food, okay? Like, when you do what you preach, I call it eating my own dog food, which some people think is kite. So it's a great reminder. And it's also a great example of the fact that we never get things right the first time, irrespective of what quality management is taught for years and years and years. The important thing is, are we open to change, and are we willing to act when it's appropriate to make the change? I'll give you my brand statement.
Yep.
You ready for this?
All right.
Okay, it says, Roy Osing is the only author, entrepreneur, and executive leader who delivers practical and proven, audacious, unheard of ways to build high-performing businesses and amazing careers. Now, there's a reason that I branded audacious, unheard of ways, because that's this. Nobody else can claim this because I branded it.
For those who are listening, he's holding up his book, Be Different or Be Dead by Roy Osing.
The audacious, unheard of ways I took a startup to $1 billion in sales. So that's my latest book.
Okay, that's the subtitle.
So the only statement is about practical and proven things. Like, nobody does that. They talk about what should work. They talk about what's consistent with theories. Plus, the other thing is, nobody can claim to the book that there are audacious, unheard of ways, because that's a way to package the solution set that only I provide. So the lesson in here, and I keep telling people, is if you're struggling with only branding, you got to create a solution, right, that only you provide. And then you claim that you're the only provider of that solution. And that's where you start. So that's what I've done here. Nobody else does this. Nobody.
I wonder if because your whole, I turned a company from early days into $1 billion brand or company. I mean, that's something I would think probably nobody else can say, kind of thing. So maybe that should be incorporated into your statement. Kind of like, Roy is the only entrepreneur coach who has built $1 billion brand and now applies those strategies to your personal brand, or something like that. So if you can get the
good.
billion,
email me what you just said. That's good. I like that.
All right.
I'm not going to pay you for it, but you can email it to me, and I'll take a look at it. I don't know. I don't feel as comfortable with that because it's, well, I don't know why I feel comfortable, because I don't know that it's true. You see, one of the things is,
well, that's what I was going to ask you about all these things. How do you know? Like, if I say I'm the only coach who does this, it's like, I'm the only guy who makes the best French fries in town. Yeah, what's the
Well,
legal? Yeah,
it first of all, it is a binary statement. It's either on or off. You
right.
either do it or you don't do it. And so what I do with people is once you have a draft only, and by the way, these are all drafts because
Yeah.
they're all always subject to change because
You
you
can
get
click edit profile on your Instagram bio 10 times a day if you want. So just keep moving it. Yeah.
So what I do is I say, look at we got to test it, and there's two questions that we ask. Is first of all, does the only statement address something you care about, you value? Because if you claim you're the only one that does something that I don't care about, then it's a useless only statement, right? It's useless. It's the second question. So, do I care about what you're claiming to be unique at? The second question is it true? Do I consistently deliver to that? So, as just a brief way to sort of see if the only statement passes a reasonable test, I would ask them. So in terms of mine, what I would do is I would go down in terms of the organization. I would go down to frontline people, and that's where I would start the testing, because they are kind of like the earphones of the customers. They tell us exactly what customers are thinking. So if I have a claim that is completely out of sync with what they're getting, then I know it's not addressing a need or a want, or it's not true. So there is a testing process to go through. In terms of what I just read you, and so am I the only one that's taken a startup to $1 billion? Something tells me no. Doesn't mean it's not a pretty interesting achievement, but there's got to be somebody out there that does it.
Yeah.
Am I the only one that's actually talking about simple, proven concepts under the guise of or title of audacious, unheard of ways? Yes, I am. Nobody else does that. In fact, nobody else talks about be different or be dead. Google it.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Which is interesting because I was going to challenge you to say almost no company could actually come up with a legit "we're the only." Especially like say you're talking about cell phone companies. So there's 3 in Canada. They're so large. They're not really. If there was something unique about one of them, the other 2 would do it. Or same with banks. Like is BMO different from RBC? Different? No, but the difference becomes sort of what they decide is TD is the. I don't know. They have longer hours. They're more customer focused. BMO is more conservative maybe, and they like the color blue. Like I don't know. So I would think it could be a danger for yeah.
That no, you're talking about yourself. I don't care whether you're blue. I mean,
Yeah.
an example would be you may think that blue is cool. I'm going to go ask customers whether that's something that they crave.
No,
And
they
if they
don't.
don't care, if they're colorblind, then it's not going to work. The other thing is there is always an opportunity to differentiate. Because if you say no, then you're literally a commodity business, and welcome to the world of price competition, and I feel sorry for your shareholders. Okay, there are points of uniqueness that need to be talked about. And I've had clients in a room where we have literally spent the better part of a day, we can get through this in a day, arguing, fighting with an executive team over this very subject. And it is so important to do it. Because at the end of the day, if people say we're not special, my question is then why the hell are you in business? Why are you leaders? Can you not see what you're special in? People are paying you money. Why are they paying you money? As opposed, BMO as opposed to CIBC. And through that dialogue, we actually get something that is workable to start. Okay, but I really have a lot of difficulty with people, especially businesses that, they're up and running and they're working. They're doing something special. They're just not figuring out what it is and leveraging it to take it further.
Yeah,
They're all special in some way.
I'm just afraid that people might, if somebody wants to be a life coach or a chef or whatever, they might think, oh, if I have to say I'm the only thing, it's like there's nothing about me that I'm the only. It's like because there's 1 billion people. There's got to be another podcaster who talks about entrepreneurship in a funny way, or and so people might be afraid to even start or feel like. But on the other hand,
hang on, they should be.
Yeah.
They should be. They should be afraid if they can't answer the question. And I tell this to startup presidents all the time: if you can't figure out why your solution is unique, you better take some more time figuring it out and don't go spend any money. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
reason that startups die, is they come up with a sameness idea, right? And they think that the technology is sexy enough that they can go and do it. So this is a due diligence associated with success, and you have to go through it. If you cannot find an answer to the question, then you should stop. And there's a couple of options.
Yeah.
You go
Okay.
find another idea, or
Yeah.
you take a week off, clear your head, come back and address the challenge in a different way. What you shouldn't do is burn cash down a road that has no cheese at the end of it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people trying to start businesses now. Like, if you look at software companies, they'll be like, "Here, we'll sell you a clone of Uber." It's like, "Oh, I can start another Uber. Uber's successful," but people don't realize, okay, now I've got my other crappy version of Uber. Well, why would people use your Uber if there's Uber, or there's a million dating apps? Okay, why am I going to switch to your dating app if Tinder already exists? So I guess you do need to think about it rather than just. I mean, it works if you're in a local area. If I'm the only barber shop in a small town, I don't have to be the only barber shop in the world that cuts hair in a certain way. I just have to be, you need to be around. So maybe it's different if it's an online business, possibly. Although what I hear on podcasts a lot is that, your unique thing, if you're an individual or a creator of some sort, is that there's nobody else like you. There's no other Josh. There's no other person with my exact personality. Although, if you don't know me, you're like, what does that mean? So you'd have to still come up with a way of, yeah.
Here's my SW squared C. So what and who cares?
Right.
The real question is, to the SW squared C, the real question is, how does Josh satisfy my specific requirements, my needs, what I covet, what I value? How does he satisfy those in a way that no one else does?
This is what I need to figure out for my dating life as well. If a woman's asking, how is Josh? There's a million guys out there, a billion. How are you? Why should I date you? Why should I bear your children?
So part of it is the definition of the customers that you decide are your target. Okay, so one way of shrinking the universe to talk about the only is to say this isn't about the world, right? This isn't about North America. This is about area code 416. Businesses in area code 416. Okay, those are going to be my customers. Now the question is, who else in the podcasting world are going after those clients? What do we know about them? What's their value propositions, USPs? Do they even have an only statement? So by shrinking the target and then looking at competition within that target, you now can have a better chance of coming up with a meaningful only statement. Okay, and you might decide, no, 416 isn't a place to go because wow, I mean this is a lot going on here. So you can do this. You can move the pieces around to try and find something that does make sense. And you need to do that for sure. So it's not the world.
So that's how an online business can adapt what I was just saying in terms of the barbershop thing. Like if you're the only barber in town, you don't have to be like the most unique barber in the world. So online, I'm like, okay, you still, focus on your audience. Okay, I'm the funny entrepreneur guy. Well, maybe there's a million funny entrepreneur guys, but maybe I'm the funny entrepreneur podcaster who talks about Toronto businesses or whatever, or
you're the only one.
I'm the only, yeah.
You're the only one that does that. And if that's something that people care about, Josh, then that's a good thing to say. If they don't give a damn, then it's not a good thing to say.
Right. I could say I'm the only podcaster that wears a red T-shirt. Well, that's so,
So who cares, right?
Yeah.
That's an SW squared C.
Right.
Tell me something that matters to me. So there's ways of doing this, and it's very enlightening, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you're the CEO of a large company. The same process works. I take people through the same process. Lifestyle stuff, it's the same works. And you won't find it anywhere. I'm the only one that does the only.
The only one who does the only. Wow, it's double only here.
That's an only squared. You might math stuff.
Yeah, and is it that you're the only one who actually does this thing, or the only one who calls it the only? Like, how can you be the only guy who talks about having a unique benefit?
I'm not. I'm the only one that talks about the only and has a process to achieve it.
Right. So it's
Everybody talks about unique selling propositions. Give me a
right. So
break. I mean, that's like having grape nuts for breakfast, for God's sake.
I was Googling that yesterday. My mom was like, how come there's no more grape nuts? And they don't sell them in Canada anymore. I was looking it up and everything.
Put some strawberries in them.
If you can
And
get
honey.
grape nuts. I said, look, they're on Amazon, but it was like $15 a box because they're being shipped from England. They're missing a market. How hard can it be to make grape nuts? If people want it that badly, just make some grape nuts.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I would put strawberries in it. But what the heck are we talking about? Why did we talk about grape nuts?
Well, because we're talking about the only statement and how important it is to apply that, particularly to commodity businesses. People might say a cereal business is a commodity. And unless you're able to communicate some added value that people care about around that solution, eating solution, then you're going to be competing on price. And that's a horrible place to be.
Especially now that
No
there's Amazon and I can scroll through and find the cheapest of anything.
Yeah, and if you have economies of scale and scope, then you can afford to do that. But most businesses don't have that luxury, so they have to carve out. I call it carving out a special place for them in the customer's mind, and that's how to think about this. What position in the mind of the customer I'm after do I want to occupy? Do I want to be known for the funny, the entertainer? Mm-hmm. Do I want to be known as the business information provider? What do I want to be known as? And that's part of the work that because you have choices and you just have to pick the one that represents the best opportunity for you and gives you some differential advantage capability. That's the name of the game.
And that's the definition of branding. That's why people pay extra for Tide, even though there's a million detergents that clean and that some are cheaper.
Yeah, they've grown into that. The problem is the statements don't say it.
Yeah.
Right. So what you have to do, what I'm saying is explicitization for customers, right, when they have a choice is exceedingly important.
Yeah. And
the only statement explicitizes it.
Yeah.
Saying words, and I call it claptrap, like better, best, leader, number one, premium.
I hate all this stuff.
Everybody says that, right?
Yeah.
We have the best. We've been in business for 100 years. So what, and who cares?
Yeah. Does that? Yeah, it doesn't benefit me at all.
Don't care.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of sacred cows that need to be dealt with.
Killed humanely in a kosher way. Yeah, and it's a great lesson for just any individual who's, I mean, it can apply to anything, even if you just want people to follow your Instagram. Well, why should I follow you? You are the only, whatever, apply it to yourself, apply it to your life. Because even when I do anything, like I tell somebody I'm going to do some copywriting for them or come on my podcast, people are always like, well, why? What's your show? Why would I do this? Why would I hire you over someone else? You gotta know, and you gotta have it ready.
Yeah. So you just nicely describe the two criteria. Why does it matter?
Yeah.
And why pick me? Two questions. Right? And if you can't answer both, answer the first one first. Because I understand what your cravings are. Yeah. That's why it matters. Because you like this sort of stuff, and I've figured that out. And then the second question goes to, and you should pick me because. All right? So that's a pretty straightforward piece of work that you will not find anywhere else. I am the only one that does that, Josh.
Yeah, no, I know you like crunchy cereal, and grape nuts is the crunchiest. It's basically like little pebbles in a bowl.
No, you use the IEST. You never use an adjective with IEST on it. Anything east, because that's a comparative, right? Oh. That's like better, best, crunchiest, coolest. No.
So would it be something like, I know you like crunchy food, and we're the only cereal that provides the crunch that rattles your skull?
No, that's too cute. I don't care about getting my skull rattled.
All right.
It's I'm the only provider of grape nuts flakes that will give you the opportunity to win a trip to Hawaii every year for the rest of your life for 4 people. Boom.
Ooh. All right. I'll collect my barcodes from my grape nuts so I can.
If you don't like traveling to Hawaii, then I've missed the mark. But if you do, then you may very well say, I can't get that from Cheerios.
Yeah.
Well, Roy will offer it to me through grape nuts flakes.
And that's the thing. I think what you need to remember too is that you're not going to be for everybody. There's no business, no comedian, nothing on earth that applies to every single person. Like even Facebook, it's like, that's the old person's site or whatever. Like there's always going to be something else, but if you find your tribe, you find your people, then, there's an audience for me, so don't be afraid to take a stand. And I think that's, goes back to what you're branding. A lot of these companies are afraid to, we're the self-help company for everybody. But, because we're afraid that if we say, well, we're the first, or we go to the woods or whatever, now you're leaving something else behind. But you have to take a stand for something. Otherwise you stand for nothing.
Oh, exactly right. That's why mass markets don't exist. And yet most people market to them. I mean, you have to decide who you are and who you want to cater to.
Yeah. Okay, I think of it in terms these days of like YouTube. Like I never blew up on YouTube, but it's more because, well, I mean, obviously I'm very talented and handsome, but I never picked a niche. It's just like,
and
here's
modest,
what.
By the way, very
modest. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's, it's like, I'm like, here's what I ate for lunch. Here's a funny podcast. Here's my stand-up comedy. But then, think of it in terms of if you have to click on a YouTube channel, what is my category? Or Instagram, like what is this page about? That's how it'll show up in people's feeds. And if I like conservative comedy, I'm going to find you. If I like liberal comedy, I'll find someone else. You can't just be I'm the everything guy because you'll never show up in anybody's feed.
Why do you think that they have Pinot Noirs grouped together in a liquor store?
Right, because I'm looking, if I want Pinot Noir, I'm going to go to the Pinot Noir section. There's no.
So you're not going to find a cab behind a Pinot Noir.
Truer words were never spoken.
There.
My parents brought home wine the other day. I think it was a bit cheaper or something, and my mom liked the label. And I was like, what is this? And I Googled it, and it's like, oh, this is a special sugar-free wine for people who can't have carbs. And I looked up a review, and they're like, this is the driest, awfulest wine, and so whatever. I don't know what my point is, but it's...
Well,
yeah,
it's not for you.
But it is for people who can't drink sugar wine. Yeah,
it
exactly. They're niche. They didn't say we're going to make a drier, bad-tasting wine just for the sake of it. It's like, no, some people can't drink the sweet wine. So
yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. So,
but somehow we lose that. People lose that whole objective.
Yeah, and I would think you could even if you're afraid to take a niche or take a stand, you can do different things now. If you're like, oh, but I don't want to, I like doing conservative comedy, but I also like liberal, then have 2 YouTube channels. Throw things that like, why not do a podcast on 2 different things? Or if you're a brand, you can have 2 different detergents and sort of go after different markets, but each one should have their own unique thing, right?
Yeah. See, it's easier for people to play at the tactical level. That's what we're discussing right now. It's easy to talk about using YouTube or using, posting on different platforms.
Yeah.
That's the easy part. The difficult part is, what are you trying to do? Because the platform you choose should be the one that best satisfies the strategy you've just created for yourself. It's got to be the best, and ideally, if you could pick one platform to deliver your what I call how big goals, your growth goals, then you do that. You don't play in other ones. Chances are you're going to need more than one. So, okay, what's 2? But don't start out thinking you got to do them all. It's crazy.
Then you wind up doing nothing. Yeah.
You just don't deliver. Well, if you don't have a strategy, it's fun. If you do have a strategy, it doesn't deliver to your goals. And most people don't have a strategy. They don't.
Right.
So they have no way to evaluate the options that they've just considered.
Yeah, and it's true. Like most people would start up. I guess it's a balance. It's like you should just start it. Like I keep hearing the story about, I think it's Jenna Kutcher who's a huge business entrepreneur, podcast life coach now, but she started off with just a cooking blog, and then people kept asking, well, how do you make a blog? How do you get an audience? And she's like, and she was giving advice on that, and so she merged into something else. Or Kathy Heller started off teaching. She was a songwriter for commercials, but people kept asking, how do you do that? So she had made a class where she taught people how to do that, and that merged into a podcast that makes tens of $millions a year, just teaching people how to be creative and work in their passions. So, but you couldn't ever have gotten there without just starting with something else and then adapting at the time. Or even if you're a big, I was going to say, if you're a big Viner, Vine changes, it disappears. Now it's TikTok, so you can't it'll change. You got to adapt.
You have to, or you're dead. That's another way to get to death. But the whole experiential piece is underused in offerings. Okay, the individual you just described, I suspect, understood that they, for some reason, were able to connect with people and engage with people to create an experience for them that they couldn't get somewhere else. And she may not even be able to articulate exactly what that experience was composed of. What she knew is she had followers. And so she earned the right then to try other things with them. And that's incredibly important. A lot of times we have the ability to actually incorporate experience in the competitive analysis work that we do, and we don't do it because for some reason people think it's soft. It's not soft. It's really hard stuff. People buy on how they feel, not what they get.
100%. Yeah. That's
So,
the thing. It's like I'm buying a
and that's
BMW
important to you.
yeah.
That's important to you in what you do.
To me personally?
Well, in terms of your podcast.
Yeah,
How
I
do
want people.
feel? And at the
Yeah,
end of
and
the day, are you asking them, how did you feel? Scale of 1 to 5. How did you feel? Okay, give me a follow-up questionnaire with no more than 5 questions, and it's all about perception and feelings.
yeah. And I think what I want to do, originally when I started the podcast, I thought, oh, I'm going to interview celebrities or I'm going to talk about celebrity gossip because I want to be in Hollywood and talk to Jennifer Lawrence or whatever. But I just started talking to people about business or what they do, getting their life tips. And I was like, yeah, like, and what I'm interested in is learning to be healthy, learning to be happy, learning how to make money. And I want people to feel inspired. And because the technical stuff, like how to start a YouTube channel or how, like, people can go read a blog, they can read an article, they can read a book, like that's technical stuff. I don't think I'd be bringing anything extra by having somebody read an article about how to do these things. So this is more, you can learn tips, but it's motivation. It's feeling good. Coming out of it, like when I listen to a podcast every morning during my hour jog, I want to feel inspired. Like, yeah, I can take on the day. I learned some tips, but I'm motivated. I've seen people overcome challenges. I want to fire people up. I want to spark the genius within them. Oh, yeah, I forgot to say the name of my podcast at the bidding. I'm supposed to say, welcome to Spark the Genius, the podcast. I'm Spark the Genius, the host, and I'm here to spark the genius within you. That's my intro. I'm glad I finally
Timing is everything.
Yeah, but that's a good idea to remember, how am I trying to make people feel, and ask people, are you feeling it? And then I guess just to wrap it up, so that, you were the marketing guy at this big company, and now you're like, what would you call yourself? Like, are you a coach? Do people find you and hire you as a coach, or do you give speeches? You wrote your book, like.
Yeah, I mean, my website pretty well tells everybody who I am. It's bedifferentorbedead.com. I can be reached there. And I blog every week. So if you want to get access to my unheard of audacious ways, you can do it through my blog.
Yeah.
You can get access to my 7 books, including my latest one, which is now out in ebook format and will be out in print version May the 31st, which is the audacious, unheard of ways I took a startup to $1 billion in sales. And it's basically an updated version of a book that I wrote 13 years ago. I mean, the content is more relevant today than it was then. It's withstood the test of time. It captures the imagination of people, and it's updated. So I would really appreciate it if people could avail themselves of that. And I'm not trying to be prescriptive in my work here. What I'm trying to do, because I don't have the right to tell people what to do. Mm-hmm. Well, the way I look at my stuff is that it's a compendium of things, practical, simple things that really worked. And I hope people are excited enough about the outrageousness of some of the ideas to actually give them a try. And if they do, then it's been a good day for me, Josh. And that's what I'm grateful for you to allow me to talk about this stuff, because it's, as I say, I'd like to see the conversation advanced and changed around it.
Does it make you feel good to help people? Like, you've worked your life building brands and stuff for a company, and now you're like, I just want to help people and make them feel good and help, I don't know.
I definitely want to help people with stuff that I think will be fun for them. They will enjoy doing it, and at the same time achieve the things that they want to achieve. Absolutely right.
Can I just ask a quick question about your website? Because I'm always thinking, like, what should my website be, like, instead of just my old WordPress or Blogger thing? Like, is it a WordPress you have, or like, how do you write the blog? It's not a Substack. It's like a.
First of all, I had a guy in Vancouver
Yep.
design it for me 100 years ago. We've kind of modified it along the way.
Oh,
I
cool.
manage my own content, so I write my own blogs, I post my own blogs, I
Yeah.
control the content on the website,
Awesome.
which is great because I had to learn how to do this. I mean, I had an executive assistant that did all this stuff for me. I had to
Yeah.
learn to do it myself, and that's been incredible. So, um, yeah,
That's great. And I love to see people that adapt and change. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh no, when I was 20 this didn't exist, so I'm never going to do it or whatever." But there's no reason. And I
it
keep
doesn't.
reminding, like when I'm telling my parents how to use their phone or their computer, I'm like, all this stuff is designed to be as easy as possible. They want you to be able to use it. Nobody's trying to trick you and make it difficult to write a blog. Like
Exactly.
just Google it, and like literally anything. Like I was going for a ride with my parents recently, and my dad's got a new car that has predictive cruise control or whatever. But he didn't know how to use it. He's like, "Oh, we're gonna have to go to the dealership and all this." I'm like, "Listen, let me just Google Camry predictive whatever," and it's like, "Here, in 2 seconds, press that button." Like,
There's a
anybody,
YouTube on everything.
everything. It's
Everything.
This did
I
not
use it
exist
all the
before.
time for home repairs and stuff like that. Always
Everything.
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing. So it's like just take advantage of that. Ask the internet. Don't be afraid. And or ask somebody else. There's always a Facebook group or somebody will walk you through something. So or message me or message Roy and we'll answer your question on air or something. I don't know. Something like that.
So I have an offer for you to consider and your audience.
All
And I
right.
call it A Audacious Forward. So the offer is if anybody wants to buy a book, which they can do from me now, because I do have printed versions. It's not in the bookstores, but I have access to them as the author. If somebody wants to buy a book from me at friends and family rates, then I will send that person a free signed copy of the book. So they'll buy one, get one free, and it's signed by Roy. And hopefully, when they pay it forward, it interests other people to pay attention to the content and have fun with the content as well. So I offer that to your audience, Josh.
Thank you.
How do
How
you
will
do it?
that work?
Yeah,
Yeah. How does that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be messy because I don't have a big, strong
We don't.
logistical system in place.
Yeah. So
All I want
message
is
Roy. Say you listen to the podcast and
send them to Gmail, roy.osing@gmail.com, and we'll figure it out.
say I want the promo code Spark the Genius.
No, pay
No.
Audacious Forward.
Oh right. Pay Audacious Forward.
And we'll
Okay.
get addresses and I'll arrange to ship it myself and personalized service.
That's
And I'm the
awesome.
only one that does that, by the way.
The only one, of course.
Of course.
That, yeah, exactly. Well, he practices what he preaches, and
There you
I've
go.
got an Amazon influencer page, so I'll add your 7 books to my recommended books. I'll probably
Thank
need a
you.
whole Roy Osing section and not just books I recommend. So
Thank
that's
you.
exciting.
Thank you.
Cool. You're welcome, and I'll see if I can even post this video on my Amazon influencer page so people can click right somewhere to buy the book
There
and
you
all of
go.
that.
Let me
But
know
I'll
where it is, Josh. Let me know where
I-
it is.
I will, and I'll put the description under YouTube and in the podcast and blah, 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 blah. All right. I'm very excited. Well, thank you for pumping me up today. See, I feel good. I feel inspired. That's how you made me feel. And it's like school. Like, I don't remember hardly anything I learned in school, but you sort of remember how it made you feel, and it sort of burns things into your gut so that you react in a way that maybe you can't identify. But now I'm sure I'll be doing big audacious things now without even knowing
That's
it.
good. I'm
All
delighted
right.
I could help.
All right. So again, go to, what is it? Better Read Than Dead? No, I'm making that up. That's
Be different or be dead.com.
Be
And it's the
different.
only Be Different or Be Dead out there. The only one.
The only one, of course. Well, thank you for being the only guest I've interviewed today, Roy. And
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be with you, Josh. I really mean that.
all right, come back anytime. Maybe when your next book launches, we'll discuss that again or something.
There you go.